This absolutely must not happen under any circumstances. The data we have discovered does not match any existing physical model. Instead of a clear picture, we see something completely wrong and frightening. And the closer we look, the worse the whole situation becomes. Reality suddenly turned out to be nothing like what we had always naively believed. For decades, astronomers were completely confident in the stability and predictability of our universe. We expected to see a space filled with natural noise and signs of distant life. Star systems were supposed to emit clear and easily readable radio signals. Instead, however, the instruments are detecting something that completely defies the laws of physics. In a certain region of space, absolutely all processes are proceeding with gross violations. It looks as if someone has rewritten the basic rules right before our eyes. At first, researchers tried to chalk these oddities up to a simple malfunction of the expensive equipment. Engineers checked every cable and every sensor on the giant telescopes hundreds of times. It turned out that all of our sophisticated equipment is working absolutely perfectly, and without the slightest glitch. The problem lies not in the Earth-based receivers, but in the vastness of outer space itself. This incredible anomaly truly exists and continues to develop rapidly. We have encountered a phenomenon capable of rewriting the entire history of human science. We have always been tormented by the frightening question of our potential loneliness in the vast universe. If we are the only intelligent beings, this places an incredibly heavy responsibility on us. But now, we stand on the threshold of a discovery that sounds even more ominous. We are definitely not alone in this endless and very cold void. There is something out there that we do not understand at all and cannot control. And this unknown phenomenon has already begun to affect our familiar world. The future of all humanity has suddenly been thrown into serious and very real doubt. We may simply not survive as a species if we fail to understand the nature of this anomaly. Our technological development risks reaching a fatal and final dead end. Space is no longer a safe haven for romantic dreams of distant interstellar travel. It has become a source of constant, mounting, and soul-chilling existential anxiety. Prepare to forget everything you were taught in school during astronomy class. Based on all our experience, this ancient region of space should be incredibly active. The first stars there formed billions of years ago under ideal conditions for the emergence of life. Planetary systems had time to cool and become covered in vast oceans of liquid water. Local evolution had more than enough time to create incredibly complex and advanced civilizations. By all scientific estimates, their advanced technologies should have long since surpassed our earthly achievements. The ether in this densely populated sector should be literally overflowing with artificial radio waves and directed signals. However, our ultra-sensitive instruments detect only a ringing, utterly lifeless, and cold silence there. It is as if we are looking at a vast, empty city that has been suddenly abandoned by all its inhabitants. The physics of radio waves works exactly the same in every corner of the observable universe. Any advanced civilization inevitably begins to use the electromagnetic spectrum to transmit valuable information. It is physically impossible to skip this crucial stage of technological maturation or to completely ignore it. Communication is the primary and most essential foundation for building any complex society. We ourselves have been continuously emitting various radio waves since the very first terrestrial antennas appeared. It is logical to assume that distant alien worlds have been doing the same for thousands of years. Their incredibly powerful transmitters simply had to leave a noticeable trace in outer space. But instead of the expected information noise, we receive only a frightening absence of any artificial radio signals. The scientific community has prepared the world's best instruments in advance to detect these informational traces. The giant dishes of powerful radio telescopes scan the night sky around the clock in search of the slightest signs of intelligence. Complex neural network algorithms carefully filter out natural background noise from distant supernova explosions. Processors analyze petabytes of raw data every day, arriving from the farthest corners of the galaxy. Special computer programs easily distinguish the rhythmic pulsations of pulsars from artificially generated navigation beacons. Initially, it was expected that we would hear a whole symphony of complex signals from all corners of our galaxy. This blind confidence was based on incredibly robust and repeatedly verified mathematical calculations. Scientists had no doubt about the success of this grand project to search for intelligent life. Astronomers had compiled long lists in advance of the most promising star systems for detailed and in-depth study. They specifically selected yellow dwarfs that most closely resemble our warm and stable sun. Rocky exoplanets orbit these calm stars, situated in the ideal temperature zone of habitability. The atmospheres of these distant worlds possess the optimal chemical composition to support complex biological processes. Huge oceans of liquid water, critically necessary for carbon-based life, lap at their surfaces. These distant worlds seem to us like ideal cosmic incubators for the emergence of our potential intelligent counterparts. The mathematical probability of a spectacular success in these sectors was assessed by all leading experts as critically high. No one even entertained the thought that these beautiful planets might turn out to be completely lifeless. We awaited a cosmic response with such impatience that this anticipation became an integral part of our popular culture. For decades, science fiction writers created thousands of optimistic stories about peaceful and beneficial contact with extraterrestrials. Ordinary people sincerely believed that more advanced civilizations would surely share their sacred scientific knowledge with us. Society was fully prepared, morally and otherwise, to meet representatives of other intelligent species. Global projects to search for extraterrestrial intelligence attracted a huge number of highly talented enthusiasts and volunteers. The home computers of millions of ordinary users processed fragments of strange cosmic radio waves at night. It seemed to all of us then that the first long-awaited contact would surely take place within the next few years. Humanity gazed at the star-studded sky with hope, not with a growing primal fear. But the longer we listened intently to the airwaves, the louder and more terrifying this inexplicable, profound silence became. Long decades of meticulous, continuous, and very expensive scientific observations of the night sky passed. The cosmic silence remained a deafening, terrifying, and utterly insurmountable invisible barrier to our minds. We felt like lonely travelers lost in an infinitely vast and empty dark forest. At first, bewildered scientists tried to reassure themselves that the old terrestrial receiving antenna arrays simply lacked sufficient power. It seemed to them that alien transmitters were simply too weak for our early and imperfect electronic detectors. Governments around the world willingly allocated billions of dollars to astronomers to create increasingly sophisticated and sensitive equipment. Everyone hoped that upgrading the technology would finally shatter this prolonged, eerie cosmic silence. Engineers quickly built huge new arrays of radio telescopes, combining them into a single, ultra-powerful global network. Now, we are physically capable of picking up the faint whispers of ancient stars at incredibly vast and daunting distances. The resolution of modern space-based observatories far exceeds the wildest dreams of astronomers from past generations. This network covers the entire planet, providing continuous monitoring of all the space around us. We see incredibly distant spiral galaxies completely free of even the slightest optical distortions caused by our dense Earth's atmosphere. But this unprecedented technological crystal clarity has brought humanity only bitter and very frightening scientific disappointment. It has only ruthlessly underscored the undeniable fact that there are absolutely no meaningful radio signals around us. Ultra-sensitive equipment has confirmed the worst fears of pessimists regarding our complete isolation. Out of inertia, we continue to fervently believe in a noisy universe teeming with diverse biological life, simply out of old habit. Eminent scientists stubbornly and repeatedly recalculated the known probability formulas for the emergence of higher intelligence in our home galaxy. Our fading hopes still naively rested on a firm conviction in the absolute infallibility of human logic. The academic community categorically refused to acknowledge its complete defeat in these long-standing searches. According to all rigorous mathematical predictions, our own Milky Way should have been literally teeming with diverse intelligent activity. We were absolutely and unshakably convinced that we simply hadn't yet tuned in to some correct, unknown operating frequency. This blind and unfounded belief long prevented us from seeing the truly terrifying reality right before our eyes. Humanity had buried its head in the sand for far too long, ignoring the obvious, frightening facts. The reality surrounding us always seemed stable, and our understanding of the laws of physics was considered the unshakable foundation of modern Earth science. We firmly and sincerely believed in the inevitable triumph of mighty human intellect and the correctness of the historically chosen path of development. Engineers at observatories were constantly expanding the scanning ranges they used, desperately hoping to catch exotic forms of cosmic communication. The search was conducted even in the most unpredictable parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. But neither bright, directional laser flashes nor powerful thermal infrared signals were ever detected by ultra-precise detectors. We were profoundly and incredibly mistaken in our initial optimistic expectations regarding the fundamental nature of this cold world. And this global, undeniable scientific failure finally forced leading astrophysicists to look at the problem from a completely different angle. Old academic dogmas began to crumble rapidly under the pressure of these undeniable facts. One fine day, it suddenly became crystal clear that absolutely all of our beautiful theoretical calculations categorically do not work in practice. The realization dawned that this was no longer simply a matter of missed opportunities or the insufficient sensitivity of modern, incredibly expensive instruments. The total absence of any external signals began to look distinctly like a deliberate, crude, artificial distortion of the basic laws of space. Some unknown entity had completely rewritten the familiar rules of the game in this sector of the universe. We have unexpectedly encountered something that purposefully and very effectively disrupts the familiar, natural course of events. Our old, cozy, and familiar picture of a safe and completely understandable world has suffered a massive, utterly irreparable conceptual crack. We stand on the very threshold of a deeply painful realization of a single cruel fact that will forever rob humanity of a peaceful night's sleep. The illusion of a bustling and friendly cosmos has finally and irrevocably shattered against the deafening wall of absolute darkness. It is absolutely clear that something in the deep, dark cosmos is behaving completely wrongly and contrary to all sound logic. Through our telescopes, we clearly see enormous ancient radio galaxies in whose active centers supermassive black holes are constantly raging. These incredibly bright quasars regularly and powerfully emit colossal streams of hard energy that literally pierce the entire observable universe. Their light easily traverses unimaginable distances and reaches our orbital stations. The natural background radiation noise from these terrifying cosmic monsters reaches our sensitive terrestrial antennas very easily and without interference. But as soon as we begin to search purposefully for meaningful artificial patterns within this powerful stream of noise, An absolute void instantly appears in the ether. The data received by observatories not only radically contradicts established theory, it literally screams of deliberate, large-scale external interference. Any useful information is artificially and ruthlessly filtered out of this energy stream. This ominous silence we observe bears no resemblance whatsoever to the simple, natural, and logical absence of highly developed technical civilizations. On the screens of powerful oscilloscopes, it appears unnaturally flat, perfectly filtered, and truly frighteningly smooth to our trained eye. A normal natural vacuum is always unstable and continuously generates random chaotic bursts and background physical electromagnetic oscillations. Quantum fluctuations should not allow the ether to be so perfectly empty and lifeless. By all laws of physics, we should clearly hear this primordial, utterly random chaos across absolutely all frequency ranges available to us. Instead, high-precision instruments stubbornly show us a smooth and impenetrable wall of emptiness, completely devoid of any meaningful informational peaks. It looks as though some unknown entity has meticulously and very pedantically cut out absolutely every superfluous sound right from the very fabric of the universe. The work of this incredible cosmic sensor is striking in its absolute flawlessness and unmatched efficiency. The carefully analyzed digital data sets look exactly as if absolutely any intelligible signal is being artificially and extremely rigorously suppressed by someone. In essence, this strongly resembles the seamless operation of some gigantic jamming system that simultaneously covers incredibly vast stellar territories. There is a persistent impression that someone is deliberately and very effectively hiding any meaningful activity from the prying eyes of random outside observers. This camouflage operates at a fundamental physical level, blocking the very propagation of waves. Not a single tiny bit of structured and organized information can physically penetrate this powerful invisible spatial wall. An unknown but incredibly complex mechanism ruthlessly and completely erases all traces of alien advanced technologies from the surrounding cosmic ether. And this terrifying process is happening right now on a colossal spatial scale that is truly mind-boggling to our feeble human imagination. Every star in the observable universe is under the constant surveillance of this system. Just imagine for a second that you are standing in the busiest center of a giant earthly metropolis during the most intense daytime rush hour. With your own eyes, you can clearly see millions of people around you constantly opening their mouths and talking very actively to one another. Countless cars and trucks rush in an endless, dense stream along the wide, paved streets, their powerful headlights flashing brightly. Life around you is literally teeming with energy, displaying incredible dynamism and constant motion. But despite all this visual splendor, not a single sound, not even the faintest whisper, reaches your ears from this vast, seething chaos. It is as if you were in some kind of dense, impenetrable vacuum of absolute, utterly unnatural, and rapidly maddening, ringing silence. It is precisely this paradoxical and frankly eerie picture that deeply perplexed astronomers in deep space are now observing on their monitors every night. They see the light of distant stars, but the ether between them remains eerily dead. Our top specialists have repeatedly and very thoroughly re-examined the most active and incredibly dense star clusters in our own old galaxy. In those distant sectors, incredibly powerful processes are constantly taking place, accompanied by monstrous bursts of harsh, destructive radiation. Scientists at observatories searched desperately, day and night, for even the slightest unnatural energy anomalies that would directly indicate the operation of giant alien machines. We hoped to detect traces of planetary terraforming or energy harvesting directly from the scorching stars. But through this dense and monstrous natural cosmic noise, we still cannot find a single faint trace of intelligent life. It turned out that at a certain electromagnetic frequency, someone has installed an absolutely impenetrable artificial filter, firmly blocking any and all attempts at interstellar communication. And this barrier strictly and mercilessly lets absolutely nothing superfluous pass beyond the boundaries of these isolated and eternally lonely planetary systems. Every potentially habitable planet has been locked inside its own invisible information cage. This incredibly frightening astronomical discovery completely and irrevocably shatters our long-established understanding of the most basic physics of the vast universe surrounding us. It is evident that modern official Earth science simply does not know of any natural mechanisms physically capable of such large-scale and precise suppression. Absolutely any powerful, directed, and purposeful radio emission would inevitably reach our ultra-precise and highly sensitive detectors sooner or later. Radio waves cannot simply vanish into the cosmic vacuum for no apparent reason. The well-known strict laws of classical optics and radiophysics must operate in every corner of the universe in exactly the same way, consistently and with the utmost predictability. Absolutely no cosmic dust cloud, not even the densest one, is physically capable of absorbing artificial radio waves in such a mathematically perfect and incredibly selective manner. Consequently, there must be some fundamentally different, artificial cause of this global and deeply frightening cosmic anomaly, hidden from us. And this unknown cause possesses technologies that are millions of years ahead of our boldest scientific theories. And it is precisely here that the overall observed situation becomes significantly worse and more dangerous for our already fragile human peace of mind. What we are seeing now bears absolutely no resemblance to some one-off strange observation in a tiny, randomly selected, isolated sector of the sky. Now we clearly see the very same incredible blocking anomaly again and again on absolutely every clear night, without exception. The jamming effect extends to all regions of space, no matter where we point our antennas. This systematic error appears synchronously and regularly in completely independent scientific databases of astronomers across our vast globe. Completely different and unrelated giant radio telescopes on different continents are recording the exact same terrifying and inexplicable phenomenon. Scientists from different countries are intently comparing their recorded graphs and, with truly bone-chilling horror, are finally beginning to grasp the true global scale of what is happening. We have found ourselves trapped in a local zone of absolute informational isolation, created by someone from outside. In search of a way out, we desperately tried to radically change our usual frequencies and hardware scanning ranges hundreds of times in a row, clinging to a faint hope for a miracle. Leading researchers were switching en masse from listening to familiar radio waves to optical and ultra-precise thermal infrared spectra in their daily observations of the sky. Experienced astronomers were very hopeful that they might at least detect residual thermal signatures from giant artificial megastructures around distant alien hot stars. The idea was to find astro-engineering structures based on their secondary infrared radiation. At the time, it seemed to all of us that simply changing our observation methods and instruments would quickly and permanently solve this vexing and baffling scientific problem. But this strange and ominous cosmic barrier of silence works flawlessly at absolutely every earthly level of physical perception of reality available to us. Absolutely no signal, not even the most powerful artificial one, can physically break through this dense barrier, which is completely impervious to sound logic. All our ingenious attempts to circumvent this blockage have ended in complete and utter failure. With every new, incredibly expensive and large-scale orbital mission, the truly terrifying scale of the problem only grows rapidly and unstoppably. the finest scientific minds on our small planet have finally and irrevocably realized that this is definitely not some random local malfunction of sensitive Earth-based equipment. It has become clear that this is a terrifying systemic and very rigid physical law, which seems to have been artificially and firmly embedded by someone into the very fabric of reality. The laws of the universe turned out to be far more complex and hostile than what we read in our school textbooks. The phenomenon we have identified incredibly effectively and absolutely ruthlessly blocks any and every attempt at meaningful communication across vast interstellar distances. It acts flawlessly as the most powerful and utterly perfect insulator for absolutely any structured and meaningful flow of alien technological information. And so far, we cannot even begin to adequately imagine the true physical nature and mechanisms of this incredible phenomenon. Our science has proven completely powerless in the face of such a monumental interference with the laws of nature. Desperately trying to find at least some logical answer, leading astrophysicists began to meticulously reanalyze the old, dusty archives of observations from past decades. They retrieved from storage old, yellowed paper records from the very first, still very primitive radio telescopes of the mid-20th century. Upon detailed examination, it unexpectedly turned out that clear physical signs of severe external signal suppression had been present there from the very beginning of these instruments' operation. The jamming anomaly had always existed. We simply did not know how to interpret the data correctly. It was simply that in those distant and naive years, absolutely none of the scientists, due to inexperience, paid proper attention to these strange graphs. The first space explorers very naively and mistakenly considered the absolutely uniform dead silence of the ether to be a perfectly natural norm for their then imperfect terrestrial instruments. Now, however, with immense, blood-curdling horror, we clearly understand our monumental and, perhaps, utterly fatal historical mistake for all of humanity. For many years, we carelessly knocked on a deaf, closed door, behind which something truly terrifying lurks. This ominous cosmic anomaly is most certainly not a localized physical phenomenon. We cannot simply point our telescope in the other direction of the galaxy and forget about it. No matter where we look in the night sky, we inevitably run into a solid, invisible wall. The ether surrounding us is so incredibly empty that it's causing a real global panic. This completely contradicts the very nature of the turbulent, chaotic, and ever-moving vast universe. The problem extends incredibly far beyond the boundaries of our modest, tiny solar system. At first, astronomers sincerely hoped that the phenomenon was limited only to our Milky Way. We tried to peer far beyond the boundaries of our home galaxy using new orbital systems. Powerful optical instruments were pointed at the Andromeda Nebula and other large star clusters. But the results turned out to be even more disappointing and alarming for the entire scientific community. In neighboring galaxies, exactly the same global effect of radio wave suppression is observed. This dead silence spans millions of light-years of completely empty intergalactic space. Scientists desperately hoped to find at least one tiny island of intelligent life in the darkness. They were looking for safe zones where the strict laws of information propagation function normally and predictably. Instead, they discovered only a dead vacuum and a total absence of artificial, meaningful activity. Mathematically precise signal suppression across such vast territories requires truly incredible power. This is colossal energy, far exceeding the capabilities of all stars known to us. We are completely unaware of any natural processes with such an unimaginably high energy level. Some theoretical physicists suggest the presence of massive clusters of dark matter acting as a shield. Other researchers confidently speak of hidden multidimensional properties of space itself and the flow of time. Extremely bold hypotheses are being put forward regarding the absorption of radio waves, by unknown quantum fluctuations of the vacuum. Every month, scientists publish dozens of new scientific articles attempting to explain this mystery. But none of these complex mathematical models explains the filter's strange selectivity. Only those ordered patterns that might carry artificial meaning are strictly blocked. Natural radio noise from dead pulsars reaches our Earth-based antennas without the slightest problem. We can clearly hear hydrogen emissions and powerful thermal flares from distant, massive magnetars. This remarkable selectivity proves that we are dealing with some kind of highly organized mechanism. If this is indeed the case, then the situation completely transcends our current understanding. Someone or something powerful is deliberately maintaining this strict regime of universal cosmic silence. Our universe is governed by rules about which we have known absolutely nothing until now. This directly and unequivocally means that the observed phenomenon is by no means a random event. The scientific community is forced to urgently re-evaluate the most basic principles of modern astrobiology. We are faced with the painful task of accepting a completely new and extremely unsettling paradigm of the reality surrounding us. We live in a universe that seems to be deliberately hiding any valuable information from us. For some unknown reason, outer space itself is utterly hostile to the propagation of artificial signals. These discoveries force us to seriously consider our own safety in this incomprehensible world. The true scale of this cosmic anomaly simply defies comprehension by the feeble human mind. It is a gigantic, all-consuming web that tightly entangles the entire boundless and cold cosmos within our sight. It is distributed with astonishing uniformity across all sectors of the dark night sky that we observe. An ominous, perfect silence hangs equally thick over every constellation and every distant nebula. None of the galaxy's possible inhabitants can escape the influence of this powerful global filter. We have encountered a phenomenon that pierces right through the very fabric of space and time. For many years, we romantically imagined that our universe resembled a vast open ocean. Scientists sincerely believed in the possibility of free and joyful communication between distant stellar islands. We thought we could sit safely on our planet and listen to the wisdom of other civilizations. But now it turns out that this boundless ocean is rigidly divided by insurmountable invisible walls. Artificial, meaningful sound is physically incapable of traversing such colossal interstellar distances. Signals instantly fade away or are deliberately blocked on their way to their awaiting recipients. As a result, every star system finds itself forever isolated in its own tiny information bubble. Imagine that every advanced civilization is locked tight inside a massive, soundproof concrete room. Intelligent beings can evolve quite peacefully on their home planets for millions of years. Their advanced technologies can reach staggering heights within their own closed-off world. But they will never be able to reach out to their nearest potential cosmic neighbors. All their powerful directed messages will inevitably be swallowed up by this strange cosmic isolation. They will forever feel utterly alone in a vast galaxy teeming with hidden life. This is a very sad fate, one that seems mercilessly reserved for absolutely all intelligent species. Such strict global isolation brilliantly explains the absence of large-scale galactic empires in telescopes. The well-known Fermi paradox finally receives its extremely bleak and mathematically logical resolution. Information exchange between distant worlds becomes physically impossible due to this built-in constraint. And we are just as helpless prisoners as all the other inhabitants of the cosmos. If our astronomical models categorically do not work there, then they are incorrect everywhere. The fundamental strict laws of physics must be the same in every corner of the observable universe. An error in calculations over gigantic distances signifies a critical failure in the very foundation of our science. This applies not only to those distant and utterly unreachable alien galaxies. It directly and very harshly applies to the very place where we are right now. Our own solar system blindly obeys the very same rules of this incomprehensible cosmic game. This terrifying large-scale problem is rapidly ceasing to be a purely academic puzzle for astrophysicists in observatories. It directly concerns the very basic structure of the reality in which each of us lives. A scientific paradox has suddenly turned into the most pressing existential threat to all of humanity. Scientists are asking a perfectly logical question about the fate of our own terrestrial radio transmissions. What exactly happens to our signals when they leave the confines of Pluto's cold orbit? Most likely, they too irrevocably dissolve into this strange, absorbing void. For over a century now, we have been broadcasting into outer space with extreme carelessness and at very high volumes. People transmit television broadcasts, radio programs, and powerful military radar pulses into space. But perhaps all these messages fade away as soon as they leave the safe confines of our sun's magnetosphere. In light of new, alarming data, the most crucial question of all arises. Scientists are desperately trying to understand the true motives behind the creation of such a massive cosmic barrier around us. Who or what needed to expend colossal energy to strictly isolate entire star systems? The real problem is that we revealed our coordinates long ago and very loudly. Since the invention of the first radio transmitter, we have been continuously broadcasting our existence in all directions. We are physically unable to retrieve those long radio waves that have already been emitted into the darkness. The range of our television signals has expanded to 100 light-years around us. If a hungry predator lurks in this darkness, it has surely already calculated our exact location. And if it is an automated punitive system, we are simply doomed to await its inevitable response. All that remains for humanity is to anxiously wonder how long it will take for the threat to reach our Earth. Our former planetary security turned out to be nothing more than a fragile illusion based on profound ignorance. Leading astronomers are now experiencing a profound professional and personal existential crisis. Observatories continue their work for now, but the atmosphere within them has become unbearably heavy and oppressive. What began as joyful exploration very quickly turned into a global, silent paranoia. We have finally fully realized our absolute vulnerability in the face of the universe's dark unknown. Our earthly technologies are laughably primitive compared to forces capable of silencing entire galaxies. Our former blind scientific optimism has rapidly given way to a cold, primal, animal terror. For centuries, we proudly and carelessly believed that we were in complete control of our destiny on this beautiful planet. Humans conquered nature, split the atom, and sent their fragile spacecraft to the edges of the solar system. We sincerely considered ourselves the undisputed pinnacle of evolution in our cozy little world. But on the true scale of the universe, we found ourselves locked in a cramped informational cage. And the scariest thing is that we have no idea what its invisible, sturdy bars are made of. This monumental discovery mercilessly shatters our human ego and our familiar, comfortable worldview. Radio telescopes continue to scan the void, but now all scientists sincerely hope for silence. We no longer seek wise, benevolent friends among the twinkling lights of the black night sky. The era of romantic space exploration has quietly and permanently come to an end right before our eyes. Now, we are desperately trying to figure out how to survive safely in this hostile environment. When theoretical physics finally reached an absolute and hopeless impasse, scientists began feverishly searching for explanations in other sciences. They began to seriously draw upon the methods of Earth biology and the principles of mass sociology. Researchers logically turned to studying the basic animal instincts for survival of living beings in an aggressive environment. Earthly evolution is built on constant struggle and continuous adaptation to deadly threats. The wild nature of Earth is full of extremely brutal examples of how weak prey are forced to hide from powerful predators. Camouflage and silence have always been the most reliable tools for survival in the food chain. In a wild and dense forest, there is only one compelling reason why birds suddenly stop singing joyfully. Birds never fall silent without a reason. Their silence is always a reaction to a powerful external stressor. This eerie stillness occurs only when a hungry and deadly beast is creeping cautiously through the thick bushes. The predator is not yet visible, but its heavy presence is already felt oppressively by the entire surrounding ecosystem. All the small inhabitants instinctively and instantly freeze in place, so as not to accidentally give away their hiding place with a sound. Fear paralyzes their vocal cords and forces them to press themselves against the ground until the danger has completely disappeared. And right now, the entire observable, vast universe painfully resembles just such a silent and frightened night forest. This bold hypothesis sounds frighteningly simple, yet is mathematically entirely logical for our understanding of cosmology. The dark forest theory describes the Fermi paradox with incredible precision, without the need to invoke exotic quantum physics. It was first vividly proposed by Chinese science fiction writers, but very quickly found serious resonance in academic science. The model proved so convincing that many astrophysicists began to base their calculations exclusively on it. Sociologists understand perfectly and very deeply that the harsh laws of Darwinian evolution are merciless toward all known forms of life. Humanism is a very rare exception, not a universal galactic rule of behavior. Imagine a vast and dense cosmos, brimming to the brim with diverse yet incredibly carefully and skillfully concealed activity. Billions of stars may be densely populated, but their inhabitants are terrified of attracting even the slightest attention. Every superfluous and careless radio pulse in this ominous darkness could directly spell the inevitable and swift demise of an entire civilization. Any broadcast into open space is tantamount to firing a suicide flare into enemy territory. Every unknown race in this terrifying mathematical model is a paranoid hunter in the darkness, armed to the teeth. All these hunters possess their own deadly technologies, strictly limited resources, and an overwhelming, insurmountable desire to survive at any cost. Given the scarcity of habitable planets, any alien civilization is, first and foremost, a dangerous competitor. No one fundamentally knows, nor can anyone know, the true intentions of the other invisible inhabitants of this cold and hostile space. Vast distances and language barriers make any peace negotiations a practically impossible diplomatic task. Everyone is terrified of the first devastating strike from the darkness, and therefore prefers to strike first at the slightest sign of a threat. A preemptive strike is always safer than attempting to discern the peaceful intentions of a distant neighbor that has been detected. In such extremely tense and paranoid conditions, absolutely any signal sent into the air instantly becomes a certain death sentence. A message of peace will be interpreted as the coordinates of a weak and overly trusting species that can be easily destroyed. Whoever, out of foolishness or excessive curiosity, reveals themselves first instantly attracts the attention of absolutely all lurking predators. A barrage of destructive kinetic or laser energy will immediately rain down on the signal source. A bright radio beacon on the airwaves functions like a blinding signal flare in the pitch-black, hostile darkness of night. In the boundless cosmos, Where life-sustaining resources are finite and extremely valuable, fierce competition is absolutely inevitable and biologically logical. Altruism simply cannot establish itself as a successful evolutionary strategy on a galactic scale. This ruthless interstellar struggle can easily take on forms that are radical and merciless by our standards. None of the hunters will waste precious years on lengthy attempts at radio communication with a potentially dangerous, developing enemy. While the signal travels back and forth, the enemy could make a technological leap and develop a superweapon. The survival and safety of one's own biological species will always take precedence over any fragile galactic diplomacy. The only guaranteed way to eliminate a potential threat is the complete physical destruction of its source. Therefore, the most advantageous and safest strategy is absolute, paralyzing, and eternal radio silence on the part of all parties without exception. It is best to simply lie low in one's own planetary system and listen very carefully, yet passively, to the surrounding radio spectrum. It is precisely this behavior that basic game theory dictates for survival in conditions of absolute uncertainty regarding the enemy's intentions. No one in their right mind wants to become an easy and conspicuous target for a more advanced and utterly ruthless cosmic neighbor. Galactic safety in this cruel world is guaranteed only by complete physical invisibility and total, deafening radio isolation. And this harsh evolutionary rule makes our current position on Earth critically dangerous and extremely vulnerable. Earth literally glows like a Christmas tree in the darkest forest full of predators. Humanity still completely lacks the necessary technologies for optical or radio camouflage of its entire vast planet. We don't even know how to selectively suppress the radiation from our own powerful military anti-missile defense radars. For an entire century, we have proudly behaved like extremely naive, very loud, and capricious children in a minefield. Our young civilization has only just ventured into space and immediately began enthusiastically shouting about itself to the entire galaxy. We didn't give a second thought to the potentially catastrophic and irreversible consequences of such a carefree, romantic, childlike openness. Scientists simply wanted to find fellow sentient beings, unaware that they might attract the attention of cosmic executioners. Naive people deliberately sent gold-plated discs with the exact coordinates of our solar system into open space. We literally turned on the most powerful and brightest spotlight with our own hands in the middle of a dark forest full of hungry predators. Our dense and very noisy information trail has already spread a vast distance from Earth's orbit in every possible direction. Radio and television waves have formed a huge, expanding information bubble around our planet with a diameter of 100 light-years. It is physically impossible to erase, rewind, retract, or somehow cleverly disguise this transmitted radio wave retroactively. It obeys only the strict laws of physics and relentlessly propagates through space at the speed of light. All our old television broadcasts stubbornly and irrevocably continue their long journey among distant, cold stars. Any intelligent species with a suitable receiver can already watch recordings of our old Olympic Games and news broadcasts. We have carelessly left a very clear navigational marker in open space, leading straight to our fragile and unprotected home. Our carelessness borders on outright collective suicide on the scale of an entire biological species. We are beginning to seriously and very reasonably doubt the natural origin of many incredible cosmic cataclysms. What we took for pulsars or quasars may turn out to be a byproduct of the work of gigantic machines of destruction. Perhaps we are simply observing, with immense animal terror, the distant echoes of horrific, large-scale interstellar wars for survival. and our own tiny little world may become the next accidental victim in this endless, brutal, cosmic slaughter. There is another, even more humiliating, bitter, and terrifying interpretation of our many years of astronomical observations. What if this all-encompassing and utterly impenetrable silence is directed exclusively and personally against us? Scientists and philosophers are seriously and actively discussing the so-called Great Cosmic Zoo, or strict isolation hypothesis. According to this hypothesis, we are under constant surveillance by more advanced species who are deliberately hiding their presence from us. Perhaps the radio blocking filter was installed not at all for the large-scale protection of the universe from some internal global threats. This local jammer may have a range precisely large enough to cover only our modest solar system. It is needed solely to reliably, quietly, and permanently cut off humanity from the vast galactic community. We may be the only outcasts in the entire Milky Way, forcibly placed in an information vacuum. This invisible but very robust information barrier may lie right at the boundaries of our native small solar system. The artificial barrier could be located somewhere in the Oort cloud, completely blocking the passage of radio waves from outside. Higher intelligences could well have erected this insurmountable barrier without much effort, long before the first intelligent humans appeared. Our planet could have been placed under quarantine as far back as the age of the dinosaurs, when Earth was just forming its biosphere. They prepared this safe enclosure for the development of a dangerous biological species well in advance, with great care and a huge margin of safety. Their computers could have calculated the aggressive trajectory of Earth's evolution millions of years before our arrival. Think about how we ourselves deal with unknown, unstudied, and extremely deadly Earth-based biological viruses. We do not release them into the wild, but keep them under the strictest lock and key in the world's most secure laboratories. Scientists make absolutely no attempt to negotiate with dangerous bacteria or integrate them into our complex human society. It would never occur to anyone to seek ways of peaceful coexistence with the causative agent of the plague or the deadly Ebola virus. We immediately place them in airtight, sterile glass boxes with thick, completely impenetrable walls. Only specially trained people wearing heavy biological protective suits have access to such facilities. We artificially and very strictly cut off any and every physical possibility they have to interact with the vast outside world. Their entire tiny, insignificant universe is reduced to the size of a small glass flask on a researcher's table in a sealed laboratory. The bacteria inside the test tube have no idea of the existence of the vast world beyond the transparent but impenetrable glass. Experienced epidemiologists study their mutations very closely through powerful microscopes, without interfering directly in the process at all. They merely record the rate of reproduction and the reaction to various chemical stimuli without making contact. What if someone far more ancient and advanced applied exactly the same utterly cold medical logic to us? What if Earth is simply a petri dish of immense cosmic proportions being observed through the lenses of telescopes? To ancient and incredibly advanced galactic federations, humanity may represent a classic, rampant virus of destruction. Our species is characterized by staggering aggression, an incredible rate of reproduction, and a tendency toward the total destruction of our own habitat. And they simply watch from a distance, like scientists in a laboratory, as we ultimately bring about our own destruction. Our own incredibly bloody and brutal history gives them a vast number of very compelling reasons for such fears. The entire human chronicle is literally brimming with endless wars, senseless cruelty, and massive environmental disasters. We constantly kill one another because of differences in religion, skin color, or simply for control over limited resources. We have not yet learned to live peacefully and productively even on our own tiny planet, which is completely isolated from space. The gap between our technical capabilities and our moral development is becoming increasingly alarming and critical. Each new ambitious generation of Earthlings invents ever more sophisticated and widespread methods of mass and rapid destruction. Human technological progress has almost always primarily served the needs of military departments and weapons manufacturers. We struggle immensely to split the atomic nucleus and immediately create terrifying weapons instead of a cheap and safe source of energy. Peaceful nuclear energy emerged much later than the first mushroom clouds rose over the ruined cities of our planet. Our basic moral qualities are falling catastrophically and very rapidly behind the rapid pace of scientific and technological progress. We remain aggressive primates with a nuclear club, capable of destroying our own biosphere in a matter of hours. Who in their right mind would voluntarily want to let such savages with nuclear warheads into their peaceful and orderly stellar home? It's like inviting a monkey armed with a loaded assault rifle and grenades into your living room. Therefore, it is entirely logical and reasonable to securely lock away such an extremely aggressive biological species until it has fully matured evolutionarily. Quarantine is the most humane measure of all possible ones, since we could simply be preemptively wiped out. The alien intelligence is simply waiting patiently for us to outgrow our adolescent, destructive, and dangerous belligerence. If we survive and don't burn our planet in a nuclear inferno, then we have successfully passed the first stage of selection. But until this hypothetical bright moment, any open and direct contact with us is categorically and strictly prohibited by galactic law. The High Council may have a strict directive against interfering in the affairs of backward and potentially dangerous worlds. This bold hypothesis perfectly and very logically explains why the information barrier works so mathematically selectively and precisely. It is tuned to block-specific frequency ranges that could transmit knowledge too advanced for us. It freely allows ordinary visible starlight to pass through so as not to disrupt the illusion of a normal physical world for us at all. If the sky were to turn completely black, it would cause mass panic and unpredictable changes in the subject's behavior. But it completely and uncompromisingly blocks any information that could drastically accelerate our extremely dangerous technological progress. Alien technologies in the hands of immature humanity could become a threat even to the barrier's creators themselves. This invisible energy wall functions as a perfect and absolutely impenetrable massive intellectual filter for our minds. We are deliberately and very strictly prevented from peeking at ready-made answers to complex technological questions from our more advanced neighbors. We must invent the bicycle, thermonuclear fusion, and quantum computers on our own, without outside hints or blueprints. Even the slightest hint from the outside could instantly lead to the creation of an even more terrifying superweapon on Earth. That is why we have been artificially left to stew in our own juices amid the utterly cold and terrifying emptiness of lonely space. This isolation forces us to focus on our internal problems rather than seek help from benevolent aliens. Humanity will have to traverse this entire arduous path of moral and technical knowledge entirely on its own, through pain and mistakes. No one will arrive in a silver spaceship to save us from global warming or an economic crisis. Only in this way, by overcoming difficulties on our own, can we build a civilization truly ready for peaceful interstellar contact. We must prove our right to exist among the stars through our own wisdom, not through someone else's technology. In that case, our enormous and insanely expensive radio telescopes are by no means transparent windows into the living universe. We are simply staring at the blank wall of our prison cell, hoping to see a glimmer of freedom there. They are simply huge, cold, and deaf mirrors that mercilessly reflect our own loneliness and complete conceptual ignorance. We catch our own reflected signals, mistaking them for messages from distant and wise brothers in reason. We constantly, like blind kittens, bump into the invisible walls of our enormous aquarium and naively think that this is the edge of the universe. We lack the knowledge to realize the very fact of our confinement within this information reservation. Earthly astrophysicists stubbornly construct highly complex cosmological models, relying exclusively on distorted data within this invisible bubble. They write doctoral dissertations on the expansion of the universe, unaware that they are merely measuring the thickness of their prison walls. Our science struggles with great difficulty to study only that tiny fraction of reality that the powerful overseers have condescendingly allowed us to see. Our knowledge of space may turn out to be just as much of an illusion as the shadows on the wall in Plato's famous cave. And behind this solid information barrier, a real, incredibly complex, advanced, and very bustling cosmic life is currently in full swing. There, incredible stellar empires are being built, entire star clusters are trading energy, and beings are traveling through wormholes. This thought deals an absolutely crushing and very painful blow to our inflated collective human pride. It is very hard to realize that we are not even a grain of sand in the sea, but merely a virus in a quarantine test tube. Over millennia, we have grown incredibly selfish and smug, considering ourselves the crown of creation and the very center of the vast universe. For centuries, religions and philosophies have convinced us of our uniqueness and special divine mission in the universe. But on the truly colossal scale of a global galactic quarantine, we turn out to be nothing more than a minor, annoying, and isolated local problem. We aren't even worth the time and resources required for open diplomatic communication. They do not even attempt to openly and strictly control us or establish any formal, official diplomatic contact. No one sends us ultimatums, makes demands, or offers to join a galactic union as junior partners. We are simply being coldly, methodically, and absolutely professionally ignored, with a reliable software or physical barrier established in the surrounding space. The control system operates entirely in automatic mode, without operator intervention. In this coordinate system, Earth is by no means the glorious and proud cradle of reason, but a reservation for very dangerous and unpredictable wild animals. It is the cosmic equivalent of a leper colony, where healthy individuals are strictly forbidden to approach on pain of death. In such isolated and remote zones, aggressive young races are usually left to the mercy of their own harsh fate. The survival of the test subjects is not a priority for the organizers of this experiment. The invisible observers are simply waiting calmly for the natural, logical resolution of our protracted and extremely dangerous global crisis. They are in no hurry, for time flows quite differently for immortal civilizations than it does for us. If, in our foolishness, we destroy ourselves in the flames of a global local nuclear war, the barrier will simply disappear imperceptibly and automatically. The planet will be cleansed of radioactive contamination in a couple of million years and will be ready for colonization by new species. In our despair and panic, we scream loudly into an utterly empty and cold void, hoping for a miracle and salvation from outside. And in response, our keen ears catch only the dull, metallic, and hopeless clang of our own invisible chains. But there is another, the most paradoxical and terrifying level of this unsolvable cosmic mystery. What if the very basic structure of our objective reality is not truly physical? Scientists are beginning to seriously discuss a completely different nature of the origin of our visible universe. We may be living right now inside an incredibly complex, artificially generated computer simulation, This theory sounds like wild science fiction, but it is firmly grounded in mathematics and modern logic. Computing power, even in our own primitive world, is growing at a staggering geometric rate. It is quite possible that some ancient supercivilization created a perfect virtual copy of the cosmos long ago. And this astonishing fact brilliantly explains absolutely all of our unsolvable paradoxes of the cosmos. We have always been accustomed to sincerely regarding the universe as a vast material and physically tangible object. It seemed to us that the blazing stars and planets were solid bodies formed after the Big Bang. But mathematically perfect silence looks completely unnatural for the wild, chaotic natural world. It is much more like the optimized program code of the creators of this gigantic matrix. The signal blocking operates with the precision of an incredibly well-tuned basic computer algorithm. Wild nature simply cannot create such uncompromising barriers out of absolute nothingness. When we look closely into the deepest corners of the cosmos, we see nothing but inconsistencies. These oddities can easily be interpreted as minor glitches in the graphics engine of our reality. For example, background microwave radiation always contains huge and completely inexplicable cold spots. According to the laws of ordinary terrestrial thermodynamics, they simply should not exist there. The suppression of radio signals looks like a desperate software attempt by the system to conserve its processing resources. The main server processor simply stops processing tasks that are not critically important to observers. Rendering thousands of incredibly complex civilizations with their technologies would require a massive amount of RAM. Any giant supercomputer would inevitably freeze up from such a colossal flow of complex data. Therefore, the control program simply coolly erases unnecessary radio traces for the sake of the system's overall stability. This very logically explains our ability to see distant light without a single sound. Rendering ordinary photons from distant stars is quite easy for any powerful quantum computer. It is simply a beautiful and mathematically precise flat texture in the very far background. It serves only as a striking nighttime backdrop and does not require detailed elaboration. Observers on Earth are simply shown a starry sky to maintain a high-quality illusion of depth. But a detailed simulation of an alien higher intelligence is a colossal computational burden on the system. Aliens' machines would require constant calculation of incredibly complex physical behavioral models. That's why the clever program carefully and extremely efficiently mutes the sound for background processes. As a result, we always find ourselves in a completely empty and strictly isolated server cell. Our modern giant telescopes are now literally bumping up against the invisible edge of our location. In ordinary video games, characters often encounter an insurmountable invisible boundary of the rendered map. They can clearly see snow-capped mountains in the distance, but they simply cannot reach them. The great cosmic silence works exactly like this hard software limit. Distant, shining stars are merely bright pixels drawn on the vast dome of our sky. No real signal will ever come from there due to the physical absence of the signal's source. If this is the terrifying truth, then all of our physics is simply a set of invented variable parameters. The famous speed of light is not a fundamental, unshakable law of the true nature of things. It is merely the maximum processing speed for complex information on this particular server. And the strict suppression of signals is a built-in system antivirus digital firewall. It is needed solely to block unauthorized scripts that overload the program's main core. Any extraneous noise is immediately cut off by reliable protective filters at the basic hardware level. Who could have originally created this grandiose and terrifying computational construct for us? Philosopher Nick Bostrom has mathematically proven the high probability that our visible world is artificial. Perhaps an incredibly ancient real race uploaded its consciousness into a secure matrix. Or we are simply a random byproduct of a program in the scientific laboratory of unknown programmers. For fun, they change the variables of our environment and watch the results of the simulation. These invisible creators observe our development with interest, in complete informational isolation. Absolute radio silence is a fundamental, strict condition for the purity of the global experiment they are conducting. We are strictly denied any external cues in order to preserve the natural course of the simulation. Any outside interference would immediately and irrevocably ruin all the statistical data being collected. This oppressive thought completely destroys any concept of our higher purpose in life. Our scientific discoveries and great art become mere dry lines of soulless code. We desperately struggle to survive inside the machine under the threat of a sudden power cut. Despite this horror, we stubbornly send signals into the indifferent digital void. It's like a video game character screaming desperately into a drawn-on cloud above their head. Programmers have absolutely no interaction with the code at our very low and primitive level. And our loud attempts to contact the cosmos could be permanently wiped away by an antivirus as a system error. Each of these popular theories paints a picture of a completely hostile and cold world. We have turned out to be complete strangers and extremely unwelcome guests in this vast universe. But the most frightening thing lies in our own historical actions, already carried out with reckless abandon. For decades, we naively sent the most powerful radio pulses into space with messages of peace. Scientists created special universal languages based on simple mathematics to facilitate translation. We enthusiastically and in incredible detail described the complex structure of our biological DNA. People honestly transmitted the exact location of Earth and the chemical composition of our native atmosphere. We absolutely voluntarily handed over all the keys to our home into this ominous void. The famous Arecibo Observatory project rashly sent a concentrated beam of energy toward the globular cluster. This powerful radio signal contained detailed infographics about our extremely vulnerable biological nature. In those years, this was naively considered the greatest triumph of human science and courage. None of the project's authors gave any thought to the hidden risks of such a public act. Now, this narrow beam radio signal is flying through space like a deadly arrow released into the void. We have absolutely no way of predicting the ultimate destination of this high-energy message. The Voyager probes carry gold-plated discs with recordings of Earth's sounds. They contain heartfelt greetings in dozens of languages and perfectly accurate pulsar maps of the galaxy. These automatic probes have long since left the heliosphere and entered the cold interstellar space. They have become our deaf and blind metallic ambassadors in a potentially very hostile zone. If they are intercepted by a predatory civilization, the aliens will receive a perfect and accurate map for an invasion. With our own hands, we have gifted an unknown force with a detailed blueprint of our home system. Commercial high-power radars scan near-Earth space to great depths every second. Military missile attack warning systems continuously emit terawatts of energy into the sky. The sphere of our artificial electromagnetic noise is expanding at the speed of light in all directions. This uncontrolled radiation instantly reveals our level of technological development to any outside observer. We shine in the radio spectrum far more brightly than our own sun does in the optical spectrum. Against the backdrop of an utterly dead and silent cosmos, our Earth looks like a pulsating beacon. We have become the most conspicuous and provocative anomaly in our local arm of the vast galaxy. If the popular dark forest theory is correct, the hunters have already aimed their weapons. They need very little time to decode the signals and decide on a strike. The dark forest concept calls for the immediate destruction of any detected source of potential competition. Light and radio waves travel fast, but the vast interstellar distances give us a small reprieve. However, this saving reprieve is by no means infinite on the scale of cosmic time. The clock of our relative planetary tranquility is ticking inexorably and very quickly. Any new day could bring a response from the sky to end our human history. Our initial openness turned out to be the most monumental strategic mistake in the history of local evolution. Imagine the chilling horror of the scientists upon realizing the true consequences of their early work. They sincerely and quite romantically wanted to build a bridge of friendship between distant stellar islands, but instead, they may have accidentally pressed the button to trigger the mechanism of our inevitable destruction. It is physically impossible to cancel these radio transmissions under any known laws of modern terrestrial quantum physics. The signals will fly inexorably forward until they collide with a barrier or an alien receiver. We are forced to live silently and meekly with this crushing awareness of our own absolute defenselessness. Modern international protocols for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence have begun to be secretly and urgently revised by governments. Many leading astrophysicists advocate a complete legislative ban on any active transmissions into space. They call for limiting ourselves to only passive and covert listening to the airwaves, without dangerous attempts to respond. This new safety concept has been given the official scientific name of the METI paradox. According to this theory, radio silence is equated, completely and unconditionally, with the survival of the entire species. But it is now practically impossible to stop the background radio noise from our cell towers and radars. The Earth is already irreversibly contaminated by technologies screaming into the abyss every fraction of a second. We are very much like a person hopelessly lost in a dark cave filled with unknown sounds. Instead of quietly searching for a way out, we lit a bright torch and began to sing very loudly. We sincerely hoped to attract kind rescuers from the Galactic Support Service to our light. But deep within the cave may dwell creatures who are far from pleased with noisy, uninvited guests. The light of our torch illuminated only the sharp teeth of those who had been patiently hiding in the darkness. And now, we cannot quickly extinguish this fire without losing our basic technologies. The greatest paradox lies in our continued construction of even more powerful directional radio transmitters. Our insatiable scientific curiosity drives us into increasingly deadly space adventures. The mistake of first contact lies in our inability to understand an alien's psychology of survival. Galactic hard ethics may differ radically from our naive notions of goodness. On the scale of the universe, it is not the kindest species that is guaranteed to survive, but the most paranoid one. Now, all that remains for us is to wait meekly for the final and possibly fatal bill to be presented. If we have indeed attracted attention, the consequences will be swift, inevitable, and utterly devastating. We should not expect the arrival of cinematic fleets with slow, colorful laser cannons. A highly advanced civilization would not waste resources on a classic orbital invasion. They use the fundamental laws of physics as the most perfect, irresistible weapon of mass destruction. Destroying an entire star system is, for them, merely a tedious routine task of clearing the territory. We won't even have time to realize we're under attack by the time their technology reaches our planet. One possible weapon is a relativistic kinetic projectile traveling at nearly the speed of light. A simple solid metal projectile accelerated to such speeds possesses incredible kinetic energy. It is physically impossible to detect it in advance as it moves alongside its own radiation. The impact of such a projectile on Earth would instantly vaporize the oceans and shatter the continental tectonic plates. our planet would turn into an expanding cloud of superheated plasma in a matter of fractions of a second. No fantastical missile defense systems are capable of stopping such an apocalypse. Another scenario involves the use of a directed beam of gamma radiation of truly monstrous power. Such a completely invisible beam could sterilize half the planet, destroying all biological life. The atmosphere would burn out, and intense radiation would kill everything alive, even in the deepest underground bunkers. This is an absolutely clean, silent, and mathematically perfect solution to the problem of unwanted noisy neighbors. The predator doesn't even need to leave the confines of its comfortable and safe home star system. It simply presses a button, permanently erasing us from the complex equation of cosmic evolution. If the barrier of silence is, after all, a quarantine, then the punishment for violating it will be no less severe. The Guardian program could simply shut down our sun or trigger its premature explosion. Our earthly knowledge of stellar physics is negligible compared to those who build these cells. They can control gravity as easily as we control electric current in wires. Earth's orbit could be artificially altered, leading to an inevitable and rapid global freeze. We are utterly defenseless against engineering of such unimaginable and devastating planetary scale. If, however, we are inside a simulation, the consequences could be even more terrifyingly instantaneous. All an unknown administrator needs to do is select our data cluster and press the delete button. Reality will simply vanish without colorful explosions, panic, or lengthy philosophical musings about the end of the world. There will be no epic, heroic confrontation between humanity and the superior forces of aggressive aliens. Our entire world, our culture, history, and our hopes will turn into a cleared-out memory space. This is the most anticlimactic and incredibly frightening, in its ordinariness, scenario for our possible demise. The realization of these hopeless scenarios paralyzes the will of many contemporary researchers and philosophers. Why make long-term plans if the verdict may have already been handed down and carried out long ago? A deadly projectile or beam may already be flying toward us, rapidly traversing the last parsecs of the vacuum. We live in a peculiar quantum state, where we are simultaneously alive and already guaranteed to be destroyed. This existential uncertainty weighs on the human psyche more heavily than any real physical enemy. Humanity has found itself held hostage by the speed of light and its own immense historical folly. In scientific circles, a desperate and chaotic debate is growing over attempts to create cloaking fields around Earth. Engineers are theorizing about laser systems capable of distorting our optical and radio frequency signatures. We are trying to figure out how to make our planet completely invisible to distant predator telescopes. But these projects require energy comparable to the power of our entire little sun. The technological chasm between us and our hypothetical enemies is absolutely and insurmountably vast. We cannot hide in a house whose walls are made of completely transparent, radio-transparent glass. Some radical thinkers propose deliberately and very quickly lowering our level of development. They suggest returning to the pre-industrial era, turning off all generators, and going silent for centuries. Their plan is to become invisible, blend into the planet's natural background, and hope that we will be forgotten. But such a step would lead to the deaths of billions of people from starvation, incurable diseases, and inevitable wars. We have gone too far down the path of progress to simply slam on the brakes without fatal accidents. Humanity finds itself trapped between an external cosmic threat and the internal fragility of civilization. As a result, we continue to do the one thing we do best in any incomprehensible crisis. We continue to gaze intently at the night sky and analyze every bit of data falling from orbit. Radio telescopes are operating at full capacity, trying to detect the slightest signs of an approaching storm. Scientists hope that if the threat is real, we will at least be able to detect its inevitable approach. Knowing of the inevitable end will at least give us a chance to bid a dignified farewell to this amazing world. But even this incredibly faint hope shatters against the merciless laws of interstellar mechanics. Most likely, we will see absolutely nothing until the very last, fateful moment. The great silence will remain unbroken until the moment our sky suddenly bursts into flames. The carelessness of those early radio engineers cost us the security of our young species' entire future. We paid an incredibly high price for our natural desire to find brothers in reason. Now, we are fully reaping the bitter fruits of our childish naivety in this dark forest. Space is utterly unforgiving of mistakes, and ours was one of the most spectacular in the history of the galaxy. We have reached the most terrifying and insurmountable limit of our understanding of the cold universe around us. All our brilliant astrophysical hypotheses lead to utterly depressing and hopeless final conclusions. Scientists are desperately trying to find some bright logic in this global absence of alien signals. Whether it's the theory of the predatory forest, strict quarantine for humans, or a grand simulation matrix, the essence of what is happening remains invariably terrifying for our entire fragile biological species. We are forced to completely and permanently reevaluate our true place in this bottomless void. Humanity is incredibly small and utterly powerless in the face of this ominous cosmic silence. All that remains for us is to remain submissively silent before the impenetrable barrier of the unknown and await our fate. For many years, science fiction writers have vainly promised us beautiful worlds of universal galactic prosperity. We were convincingly told that one day humans would surely become full-fledged citizens of the universe. But harsh reality has taught us an extremely cruel and sobering lesson in survival. The vast, dark cosmos is certainly not waiting for us with open arms and gifts. Rather, it would prefer that we never open our mouths to offer friendly greetings at all. The great silence makes it abundantly clear that there are strict and merciless rules of the game. We are forced to silently submit to this invisible diktat of a force that vastly surpasses us. Every new telescope now brings astronomers far more panic than bright hope. We study the graphs intently, our hands trembling with fear of finding the real answer there. Any meaningful signal we receive will inevitably shatter our familiar, safe world. If we hear an alien voice, we will have to urgently prepare for the worst-case scenario. This oppressive paranoia is gradually and inevitably poisoning all modern space exploration programs. Absolute radio silence has long been our greatest curse and our worst nightmare. But in a cruel twist of fate, it is also our only remaining reliable shield. As long as the endless dark cosmos remains silent, humanity can calmly continue its bustling life. Ignorance has turned out to be the most comfortable state for our unprepared and very fragile psyche. People instinctively hide behind a wall of silence from global, unsolvable existential threats. But our innate, fundamental curiosity is physically impossible to simply switch off completely. We will inevitably continue to listen to this void every long, cloudless night. Scientists will stubbornly search for the slightest cracks in this invisible and mathematically precise barrier. Our young species is evolutionarily programmed for a continuous and extremely risky search for truth. We are mercilessly driven forward by a thirst for knowledge, no matter how deadly terrifying it may prove to be. We will continue our research to the limits of all our current technical capabilities. Even if this bitter final truth threatens us with complete and certain physical annihilation. This unquenchable curiosity is our greatest strength, and, at the same time, our greatest weakness. It was precisely this drive that compelled our ancestors to come down from the trees and build the first radar stations. We are inherently incapable of stopping halfway toward unraveling nature's truly great mysteries. And this trait may be the cause of our triumph or our complete extinction. Perhaps one day, we ourselves will safely reach the incredible level of the creators of this silence. We will survive our internal wars and enter a qualitatively new stage of intellectual development. People will clearly understand why it was vitally necessary to carefully conceal our presence in the universe. And then we ourselves will voluntarily, consciously, and permanently shut down all our powerful transmitters. We will simply stop drawing unnecessary attention to Earth from the ancient inhabitants of the deep galaxy. We will quietly and disciplined join this great cosmic silence. This epochal event will mark our final act of coming of age as a responsible species. We will forever cease to be foolish, screaming children in a dark forest full of dangers. Humanity will learn to listen to the void without revealing its exact location to powerful aggressors. Rational and utterly cold caution will completely supplant our former reckless historical openness. But until then, we remain completely defenseless targets in our tiny system. We continue to circle endlessly around a lone star on the outskirts of a spiral arm of the galaxy. Our blue planet flies through the cosmic cold, surrounded on all sides by a deafening wall of silence. We diligently write our history, completely unaware of whether there are any outside observers. This crushing uncertainty is the heaviest burden on the collective human mind. With every new decade of research, this invisible psychological burden only grows heavier. Think about this frightening fact the next time you look up at the bright stars at night. You will never again see the familiar, friendly, and utterly welcoming world there. You will clearly see before you a gigantic enigma that cruelly hides the answers from us. This beautiful, sparkling dome above our heads is full of deadly secrets. The greatest of them lies in the true cause of the endless silence of the bottomless, cold ether. We stand in the face of a threat capable of easily erasing our entire carefree existence. For centuries, we sincerely believed that we fully understood the laws of our native universe. But now, our finest minds fearfully admit their complete intellectual defeat. Our cutting-edge science has turned into a pitiful attempt to read a book locked tight behind a padlock. We currently have absolutely no chance of finding the right key to this complex mechanism. The real hidden truth lies infinitely far beyond the limits of our biological perception. The primitive human brain is physically incapable of fully grasping the scale of this structure. Evolution has not prepared us in the slightest to understand phenomena of such colossal, universal scope. We are like blind ants desperately trying to understand the workings of a nuclear reactor. All we can do is passively record anomalies in the ether and formulate tentative scientific hypotheses. And every new conjecture by alarmed astrophysicists turns out to be many times more terrifying than all the previous ones. We wander blindly in impenetrable darkness, without the slightest reliable guide to salvation. Science has become an endless and extremely dangerous journey through a vast labyrinth with our eyes closed. The reality we are accustomed to has turned out to be completely different from what we naively imagined. It is far deeper, much darker, and incomparably more complex than any of our wildest fantasies. Something incredibly powerful is deliberately blocking all meaningful signals from deep space. We still have absolutely no idea why this terrifying process is happening right here around us. Perhaps it would be better for humanity never to learn this truly terrifying truth. Some of the universe's terrifying secrets must remain forever hidden in the darkness of ignorance. An attempt to forcibly tear away this black veil could lead to the immediate end of our history. Sometimes, blind ignorance is the only reliable guarantee of survival for a fragile species. So keep gazing at the night stars, but do so with due respect and fear. Remember that the incredible beauty of the night sky may be nothing more than a holographic screen. Behind it lurk forces capable of erasing us from the fabric of space in a split second. Our loneliness is not a tragic accident, but the result of someone's utterly cold will. We are securely locked in our tiny world, and the keys to this prison were long ago thrown into a black hole. And perhaps we should be incredibly grateful for these sturdy, invisible bars, because as long as they stand firmly in place, we can pretend we are safe. We can continue to stubbornly believe that we are the main characters in this cosmic play. And even if it is merely an illusion, it allows us to wake up every morning without a scream. Reality is absolutely not what we always thought it was, with such confidence and pride in the past. It is incredibly cold, calculating, and utterly indifferent to the fate of our small, proud species. We have quietly ignored this discovery because we are simply not ready to live with it.